a phone statement, logged onto a web portal chat to the telco and said, we've lost our phone, can we please have our phone number ported to a new SIM? The phone provider asked some security questions. Can we answer all security questions about your life from your personal email account? Yes, we can. Criminals answered all the security questions and the phone was ported to a SIM card which was operating out of Mexico. Then the criminals just started looking at what history was in their personal email account and they identified that they had a self-managed super fund, which is a #1 target. So they then just started to identify how to access that self-managed super fund, and the super fund has security features. They have two-factor authentication. So when you apply to transfer money, they will send an SMS to your phone to say, can we confirm that you are transferring this money? Criminals are now accessing and controlling the victim's phone. So all second-factor authentication that went to the phone was confirmed by the criminals. And they use a couple other little bits of tools and stuff, and they use the information in their personal email account to effectively create new bank accounts. So by controlling these victims' email account, they literally control everything about them and they would access anything they wanted from them. If they couldn't have accessed their self-managed super, I would suggest that they would have just started applying for loans, further loans in their name. Button. So while we're talking about email accounts, I'll go on my rant about passwords. So we have a lot of different accounts that we manage, and you'll have your Facebook accounts, and they're all managed by username and passwords. And I personally think they're all really important. But let's just separate them and say there are some accounts that you currently manage, which I would suggest are critical accounts. I would suggest that if you were to lose control of or allow criminals access to any of these accounts, I should have added the Apple iTunes account. So your email accounts, your MyGov account, which allows you to control your tax, Medicare, and possibly your health records. You'd have bank accounts, which may be credit cards or mortgages, superannuation, other investments. You're going to have a number of critical accounts that you manage, which have a direct impact on your quality of life. And what I would suggest that if criminals gained access to these accounts, your quality of life would take a downward spiral very quickly. You would lose, financially you'd be affected, but more importantly, emotionally, you and your family would be destroyed. It would affect, from the moment you wake up to the moment you did not go to sleep at night, it would affect every moment of your day to lose control of these accounts. So what are our attitudes to passwords on these sorts of critical accounts? So most of them would have two-factor authentication. So you'd be allowed to have an app or a token which allowed you to type in your password, and then a second-factor authentication, you need a code to access it. So let's assume today that for these accounts, we're all using two-factor authentication, which is awesome. And let's only talk about the passwords here. We could say there's somewhere between 5 or 10 accounts in your life, in your family's life, which are critical. So there are two options when it comes to passwords. I don't remember things very good at all. So I use a password manager, which is a bit of software. You may have a little diary next to your computer, and so each one of those accounts have an independent complex password, which is not guessable according to your lifestyle. Okay, so you'd have a complex password for each of those 5 to 10 accounts, and you'd have some way to manage them. Or you'd have photographic memory, so you could write it down and never ever forget it. Because the other option, if you don't have those two, is that you're either reusing passwords or you're using overly simplified passwords for these accounts. This is mind-blowing stuff because I cannot express how dangerous it is to have simplified or reused passwords on some of these accounts. And I want to demonstrate how important it is, but I want to show you this site called Pastebin. It's basically an anonymous site which allows anyone in the world to post things, and it's almost impossible to trace them. And you see a lot of criminals posting, advertising that they've stolen information and posting that they're selling information. And I've used quite an old post from 2016. It's someone who claims to have had a leaked Twitter database, and they claim to have 32 million accounts, and they're selling it. And I've blanked out the address that you could look at to see it, and their transaction details. So there's a criminal here who claims that they have username and passwords for Twitter accounts. And under here, you'll normally see basically a sample set where the person would offer 50 to 100 username and passwords where you can sample the information, and if you think those username and passwords are good to hack people's accounts, then you can go and buy the rest of the information. And you see this a lot where they're just reselling information. What I want to just go straight to the end is, this is a common thread on all these style of posts that you'll see. So what the poster has said is, yes, this means for half a Bitcoin you can hack any Twitter user, and if they use the same password on other sites, you can hack there too. So their iCloud and all their personal photos, their email accounts, Facebook, Instagram, are all vulnerable to being hacked once you have this database. Criminals are well aware that we reuse passwords, and they actively tell each other that if I'm going to sell you a database of stolen accounts and passwords, that part of the selling pitch is that go to all the other accounts this person owns and test that password there. Because imagine if you had a password for something as simple as Twitter, and you also use the same password on your MyGov account. We're quite relieved that we're all using two-factor authentication, aren't we? Because that would be crazy to think that something as simple as a Twitter password reused on something as important as MyGov, that's some fairly risky sort of attitude to have towards your information and to your family. Because I think I'm going to, I jumped ahead of myself. And you're not alone. So this is a survey which was done at the start of this year. There was 5,000 people in Australia, America, and the UK. And even though 91% understood the risks of using the same password, almost 60% said they did it anyway. So if you happen to be reusing passwords, you're not like in the minority. But I can talk about losing dollar values all the time, but I just cannot simply express the heartache and the trauma which goes through people's lives to lose these information. It's quite odd, because if you go for a walk and you have your handbag or wallet or something stolen, a criminal's committed an offence against you, and you have no problems going to police and telling friends, I just had my handbag stolen, it's outrageous, I can't believe this would happen. But with these online crimes, there's a very different mindset, there's a very different mentality. People suffer these terrible guilt and anxiety, and they say, did I do something wrong? You're being targeted by a criminal who's committing an offence. You should not feel like you've done something wrong. Perhaps you shouldn't reuse passwords, but a criminal is still committing an offence and targeting you. So, but it's quite hard to get this through, and a lot of people go through terrible experiences after losing control of information. It's a really interesting article this chap posted where he talked about it took him 3 years to try and recover his identity after it had been stolen. He talks about how he had he tried to buy a house and that didn't work out because criminals were just resharing his information and reapplying for loans and affecting basically his everyday life. And in the article, he talks about just the anxiety every day he had when he went to pay for something, because you start to lose faith in everything that controls your life. So something as simple as going to the ATM and taking money out, or letters in the mail. He was constantly anxious and nervous and worried about receiving letters from bill collectors and so forth. And it affected his entire life for 3 years. And I can tell you firsthand, I've spoken to people who are just breaking down on the phone. They had broken because they've lost control of their information and people are using it. It's a terrible experience. And again, I'll go back to IDCARE. Again, they dealt with 20,000 people in 2017. 8% of the people that spoke to them had to be referred to mental health treatment as a result of their exposure to their information. It causes terrible stress. And I'm going to keep saying it just to try to get the impression through that looking after your information is just not your information. It affects your whole family, your loved ones. It's not simply you're protecting your entire way of life. And in the same study, in the same report, of the 20,000 people that spoke to IDCARE, sort of 92% of them demonstrated impacts like being physically sick, lack of sleep, actually vomiting in anxiety because of the stress that it's causing people. So why is the challenge so hard? I suppose if I was being a little bit cheeky, and I would say, well, this conversation now is a bit like, we're all records managers, we're all working in the records managers field, so you guys look after the information within your organisations. And you at some point may have had an experience where you've gone to your bosses, the board, and you've said, the way we're currently managing our records isn't working. Our procedures and policies, our processes aren't clearly defined or they don't exist. We need to spend time, we need to spend effort to change the way we're doing things because we're not doing it right, and I'm worried about compliance and so forth. We might need to use better software, we might need to use other things, and you're passionate about protecting the records within your business, and so it breaks your heart when your manager goes, well, I hear what you're saying, I appreciate it, but we do it this way because we've always done it this way. and nothing bad has happened yet. So maybe we can go a bit longer, just the way we are. So today, I'm you, talking to you, and hopefully you're the bosses listening and thinking about what you can do to change, because the same passion that you have for protecting the records of other people, start to think about taking it home and protecting your own information. And so what I want to do is, I don't expect everyone to sort of completely change the way you do things, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just 4 simple slides now. I'm going to talk about them, and I encourage you to take out your phones or take notes. They're resources that I used all the time when I was a detective, dealing with people and trying to help them through these crisis situations. The idea is that I want you to do 2 things. I want you to be able to, at the end of today, start to just work in little steps in raising your awareness and raise the awareness of everyone you know, because I want this to be like a sort of the start of a grassroots, I want you to just to start sharing this. I want the right information shared. And I want you to have some tools in your back pocket, so if you find out you've been targeted, or if you have friends or loved ones, you can just go, I see your pain, this is what you can do. Just go straight to the site, use this resource, and they'll help you along the way. So it's not complicated, but these are really important sort of resources. So the first one is Stay Smart Online. It's the Australian government's security site. It has some really good features. It has an alert service on your right, and you can subscribe to it. They regularly update through Facebook, and I really encourage you to subscribe through your social media accounts, and just when you see an alert, reshare it, and encourage everyone to reshare this information, raise our awareness. It has some great tips on how to protect yourself, and if you have friends that are in small business, the second, Protect Your Business, it has some really great tips for small and medium businesses who are targeted quite aggressively by criminals, to sort of use some resources from this site to help themselves as well. It's a really good site. The next site is called ScamWatch, and this does a lot more than just cyber-based offences. This deals a lot more with all scams. It's a terrible experience for family members to have a loved one who are suffering like romance scams or fake lottery scams. They go through this process, the whole family, of guilt and denial, and it becomes an emotional conversation. You can't say to your loved one, the person you think you're in love with is scamming you out of your entire life, which happens. ScamWatch is a brilliant site because basically it allows you to say, I think you're being scammed. The ACCC, who's the authority on this, have a site called ScamWatch, and I've found basically real life stories of people going through the same scenario. Please just read these stories, and it's a great resource to allow people to use another independent body to show what these scams are occurring. And they have a very active Twitter feed. They're not really active on the social media, but I see them a lot on Twitter. They offer a lot of current scams, anything. The other day they offered a scam, basically Mandarin-speaking people were being identified and being targeted in phone scams. So I don't speak Mandarin, but I'm going to share it. Just reshare if you can. This is a fantastic site. It's called the e-Safety site. It's by the e-Safety Commissioner. It offers some really good resources on cyberbullying, illegal content, and image-based abuse, and helps victims of image-based abuse offences request takedowns and so forth. It offers some good tips on how to lodge complaints with social media platforms to have certain content taken down. And they will actually take, in some cases, complaints and act on individuals' behalf to have content taken down. And they also have some very good online tuition and stories for younger people to identify how cyberbullying occurs, and some advice on how to get through those processes. IDCARE, I could talk all day about IDCARE. If there's only one thing you learned today, please think of IDCARE. They have, where do I start? Okay, so they've got some really great self-help guides. They've got guides